Hello guys, welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about Bowen Byram and which NHL team needs him the most. Now, a bunch of NHL teams are hoping to jump up in this year's NHL draft lottery, and with Bowen Byram being the best defenseman in this 2019 NHL draft, which NHL teams need him the most? Watch till the end to find out. Now, Bowen Byram is the elite defenseman in this 2019 NHL draft. While there's some fantastic other defensemen in this draft, guys like Victor Soderstrom, guys like Cam York, he is the class of the defense in this year's draft. And while this is a draft mostly for forwards, there are some solid defensemen, and Bowen Byram leads that group right now. Now, Bowen Byram is a Canadian born in British Columbia. He is at age 17 right now, turning 18 in July. He is 6'1", 192 pounds with the Vancouver Giants this season in the WHL. He's had a fantastic season, especially offensively, where in 67 games, he has put up 26 goals, getting 45 assists for 71 points. And in the playoffs, he's been good as well, playing 8 games, getting 3 goals, 7 assists for an amazing 10 points. And when it comes to a defenseman that can both dominate offensively and defensively, that is something that a lot of NHL teams would love to have, but a few teams right now in the NHL need. And for a lot of teams in the lottery right now, that's something that, again, they really do need. Now, just like the Jack Hughes and Capo Caco videos, I've divided 13 teams who I think need him the most into 3 tiers. Tier 3 being really want, Tier 2 being badly want, and Tier 1 being need Bowen Byram. Now, heading in on to Tier 3, the first tier of the really want section, I have the Anaheim Ducks. They're a very interesting team. They got a pretty solid draft position as well. They could be in the race to get a guy like Bowen Byram. When it comes to their defense, I feel like the forward group is a lot more of a need when it comes to getting a prospect in this year's draft, but Bowen Byram would still slot in well. Now, when it comes to their left side, they do got Cam Fowler there. They do got Hampus Lindholm, so there are 2 solid defensemen there already. But I feel like Bowen Byram would slide in nicely, and for the youth core, it can't get much better, especially defensively, in this year's draft. Now, the next team in Tier 3, the next team that I think really wants Bowen Byram is the Arizona Coyotes. And they're a team that is also very interesting because when you look on their defense on paper, it had a pretty solid season, especially when you had Antti Raanta out. You had guys like Jason Mears out for almost all of the season. It was a very brittle lineup for the Arizona Coyotes for most of the season, but they were able to get it done, which if they didn't, I would have had Arizona higher up in the tiers, but they're in Tier 3. I still think they could definitely use a guy like Bowen Byram. If they're able to go up that high, I think they're at the 14th spot right now. That would be blissful for them. I don't think it's going to happen, but they would still really like him anyways. Now, the next team in Tier 3, I think, is the Philadelphia Flyers. They are a very interesting team. They just missed the playoffs this past season. I think they will target defense in this 2019 NHL draft, but I don't think they're going to be at where Bowen Byram will be selected. Currently, I think they're at 12th or something. They're in that area where they probably won't get a guy as good as Bowen Byram, and if they jump up, I think they maybe go for a guy like Bowen Byram, but at that point, you might take a guy like Alex Turcotte or Dylan Cousins. So, it's up in the air. When it comes to their left side on the defense, they already got Gostisbehere, they already got Provorov, so it's already pretty stacked, but he would still be a pretty solid fit on a good Philadelphia team. Now, the last team in Tier 3, I think, is the Montreal Canadiens. They are also a pretty interesting team to where they could definitely use Bowen Byram, but it's pretty unlikely that they'll actually be in a place or position to actually draft him. Now, they're in the 15th spot, so Bowen Byram is not going to draw or go that low in the draft. That's just not going to happen whatsoever. Though, if they do go up to number 3, I could see them drafting Bowen Byram a little bit higher than people might expect, but still might be a decent fit. And when it comes to their left side, they have Petrie and Shea Weber as right defensemen, which would work very well. If they can get in position to draft Bowen Byram, I think they honestly should. But again, it's all about that if, because it's pretty unlikely right now. Now, moving on to the Tier 2 section, the badly want section, and we'll start out with the Colorado Avalanche. You have a ton of potential to draft a guy like Bowen Byram. Now, they have Ottawa's first-round pick, which right now has the best odds of being the first overall pick. If they get that pick, or even if they get top 2, they aren't drafting Bowen Byram whatsoever. But if they get the number 3 pick, if they get the number 4 pick, I think that would make it very, very interesting. Now, when it comes to the right side, they have Barrie and Erik Johnson as right defensemen. So the left side is open quite a bit for a guy like Bowen Byram to come in there. Now, they already have Makar coming up through the ranks, and he'll be a fantastic defenseman for years to come. But Bowen Byram could finagle his way into that defense and could be a star in his own right. And I think that could happen if Colorado wants to go after it. And if they get the 4th pick, if they drop to that 4th pick, I honestly wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if they end up drafting him. Now, the next team in the Tier 2 section, the badly want tier, I have the Vancouver Canucks. They're very interesting right now. Currently, if the draft lottery stays, they have the 9th overall pick, which is pretty solid, but they're not going to get Bowen Byram at that position. So, the best way that the Vancouver Canucks will get to that part is by going up and maybe getting the 3rd overall pick. If they get that 2nd or 1st, they're going either Jack Hughes or Capo Caco. But when it comes to that 3rd overall pick, it's pretty interesting. They already got Quinn Hughes as left defenseman. He is pretty much the defenseman of the future, which leads me to think if they do get that 3rd overall pick, it'll likely be another forward like a Trevor Zegras, like a Turcotte, like a Cousins, and I feel like that's kind of where it is right now. Maybe if the Vancouver Canucks lost a few more games and were in that maybe 6 to 7 position, I could see it as a lot more realistic, but I see either way, Vancouver not really getting him in the end, and I think they would much rather have a guy like Jack Hughes. Now, the next team in Tier 2, the next team in the badly want section, I have the Florida Panthers. They're a team that I think could desperately use a guy like Bowen Byram. Now, again, they're drafting with the 13th overall pick. Bowen Byram is by no means going to drop that low, but man, could they use a guy like Bowen Byram right now. Now, on the left side, they got Keith Yandel, they got Ryan, they got Matheson. Those are two guys that I don't think are ever going to be first defensemen, but Bowen Byram can be that guy. Again, when it comes to that, it's going to be a weird situation if Florida actually goes up there. I'm not sure if they will take a center at that point. They already got Barkov. They already got Trocheck. Their center court is pretty complete. Also with Henrik Borgstrom coming up as well. So I feel like they might go for that defenseman. They might go for that defenseman to round the team out a little bit more. And getting a guy like Bowen Byram would be the cherry on top. Now we're going to be moving on to Tier 1, the need Bowen Byram tier, and we're going to be starting out with the New York Rangers. They're a team that, oh my gosh, could really use Bowen Byram right now, and they're in a decent position and have a solid chance to actually draft him. Now they're at the 6th overall position, which is where a lot of people have him right now. I have him at number 5 in my personal rankings. I think he will go top 5, but it depends if some teams earlier on in the draft go for some forwards, maybe guys like Turcotte, maybe guys like Cousins. It really does depend on what the other teams do, but the New York Rangers could definitely use them. When it comes to the left side, their best guys are really not all that great. They got Mark Stahl. They don't really have too much on that left side. And when it comes to a guy like Bowen Byram coming in, while Keandre Miller is going to be coming up the ranks as the left defenseman of the future, and they get Bowen Byram, that completely changes, and he will be a star in NY. Now moving on to the next team in Tier 1, the next team that needs Bowen Byram, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. And some people might not think this way, but in the end, I think it makes a ton of sense if the Blackhawks were able to get him. Now, they're at the 12th position. Bowen Byram is by no means going to fall down that low. But if they do end up going to the top 3 and getting that 3rd overall pick, I wouldn't say it would be crazy if they ended up drafting Bowen Byram. Now, I think it would be the smarter decision to go after a guy like Alex Turcotte, Dylan Cousins, whatever you might want at that position. But Bowen Byram could be a great fit in Chicago. When it comes to left defense, you got Duncan Keith there, and then it just completely falls off. You got Joka Harshu coming up as a right defenseman. You also have Boquist as a right defenseman. So that right side is perfect for the future right now. But the left defense side could use that superstar that Bowen Byram is right now. And while Chicago has an outside chance at drafting him, it would still be a fantastic fit right now. Now, the next team in Tier 1, I think the next team that needs Bowen Byram is the New Jersey Devils. They are a team that could desperately use his defensive help. Now, right now, if the draft stayed the same, they'd be drafting the 3rd overall pick. At that point, I think they would go for the best player available, which would likely be a guy like Alex Turcotte or Dylan Cousins. But let's say they go down a pick or go down a couple of picks because some teams rise up ahead of them. I think it wouldn't be crazy at all to see Bowen Byram go to the New Jersey Devils and them to maybe select him a 5th overall. That wouldn't be crazy whatsoever, especially with their current defensive need. Now, when it comes to the defense, the top 2 guys are Damon Severson and Sami Vatanen. That's okay, but when it comes to the depth, it's also pretty horrendous. And getting a guy like Bowen Byram, while also having Ty Smith developing as well and becoming a very solid defenseman in the next couple of years, that New Jersey defense could be strengthened quite a lot. And having a great guy and a possible star in Bowen Byram would help quite a lot right now. Now, heading into the next team in Tier 1, the next team that I think needs Bowen Byram, I have the Detroit Red Wings, and they are a weird team. They will be drafting 4th overall if the draft lottery changes nothing. That is a very favorable position, especially if they want to get a guy and target a guy like Bowen Byram. And when it comes to the defense, I just don't want to really speak on it right now because it is just horrendous. While there has been some decent seasons by guys like Eriksson, I really just don't see that defense being anything right now. While they got some solid guys like Cholowski coming up, that is good for them. I still think they need that bona fide superstar superstar on the defense if they want to contend in the future and want to complete that rebuild completely. And getting a guy like Bowen Byram would be just the icing on the cake. Now, they already need some forward help. That pretty much with that team, they need a lot of different things, but getting a guy like Bowen Byram to solidify that defense would go a long way in making them a cup contender in the next few years. Now, I have discussed 12 teams so far in this video, which leads us to one team who I think needs Bowen Byram the most, and in my personal opinion, I think the Los Angeles Kings are the best fit and definitely need him the most out of any NHL team right now. Now, to explain my reasoning, we just have to look at the LA Kings defense. Now, as the first guy, you got Drew Doughty, obviously. Last time I checked, he's a pretty solid player. Then you got Dion Phaneuf. You got Alex Martinez, who is decent. You got Derek Forbert, Matt Roy, I've never even heard of him before. Paul Ledoux, Sean Walker, Curtis McDermott. Alright, okay, so that defense obviously needs some work. I think we can lay that groundwork right now. But when it comes to getting a guy like Bowen Byram of his caliber, man, LA needs that right now. Now, to be fair, LA kind of needs everything right now, so that's why I also picked them to be the most needed of Capo Caco. But when it comes to Bowen Byram, he is an exact fit. He's perfect for what LA needs right now and should be going for. And while they have a solid draft position right now at number 2, they should be doing all they can to be in a position to draft a guy like Bowen Byram if they aren't already. Now, yes, with the LA Kings, they'll be drafting 2nd overall if the draft lottery stays the same. I already know that. But if LA is dropping to this 4th spot, I think they should 100% be going after a guy like Bowen Byram. Obviously, you'd love to have guys like Dylan Cousins. You would like to have guys like Alex Turcotte. But when you're outside of the top 3, I think especially for LA, I think you kind of have to go more for need, and Bowen Byram is definitely what they need right now. Now, of course, a lot of this does depend on draft position, where these teams end up placing, and for the LA Kings, that is no different. If they're in the top 3, I would say they don't pick a guy like Bowen Byram, but if they're outside of it, maybe 4 or number 5, I think they should go for it. So it does depend, and of course, with all these teams, it does depend, but Bowen Byram is a sensational young defenseman that'll provide a lot of talent for the team that ultimately ends up drafting him. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below. So, let me know, what do you think about Bowen Byram and his season so far? What do you think about the teams that he would best fit on? And of course, the big question of the day, which team do you think needs Bowen Byram the most? But, if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you can click on this card right here to watch my video about Jack Hughes and which NHL teams need him the most. But, that'll be it for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on Bowen Byram and which NHL team needs him the most. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.